Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe. On this episode, Ben covers the most effective way to kill weeds at the current crop stage. Henry Merschman, president of Merschman Fertilizer, joins us to talk about prices, logistics, and production in the fertilizer industry. The weather is impacting the markets around the world. Be mindful of how it can affect your grain marketing. Happy Independence Day.
Hi, this is Joe Merschman. Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe, episode number 48. Today we have Ben and Turk being out of the office. We asked Henry to come in, my brother, who's going to talk a little bit about fertilizer. But before we get to the fertilizer and all the fireworks that's going on right now in the fertilizer business, let's talk to Ben and about some of the problems we have with wet weather and dry weather and everything in between.
Yep, that is correct. We have taken care of a handful of phone calls this week about weeds that are really hard to kill. So we kind of wanted to talk about what are the options if the weeds are tall, and what are the options if we have already missed our first application and the weeds haven't died yet. So we're working in the Enlist system, and you spray Roundup and Enlist and you miss for whatever reason that application. The weed curls over, bends over, looks like it's going to die, and then it pops back up. The best thing to do is to go out with the biggest hammer that you have and spray the max rate of Liberty and the max rate of Enlist 1. And the max rate of Liberty at this instance would be 43 ounces, and the max rate of Enlist 1 is 32 ounces or a quart. You want to spray that product like you're spraying Liberty. You want to spray that product at 20 gallon an acre. You want to make sure you have 3 pounds of AMS, and you want to make sure that you are fogging that product into the canopy, because like we talked about last week, you have to hit every growing point on water hemp, and a 3-foot tall water hemp has hundreds of growing points on both sides of the plant. So application is going to be extremely important, and I think that Liberty is carrying a huge portion of the kill right now with the plants getting as tall as they are. The Enlist is definitely a good component in that, but those weeds have already seen Enlist once. I think the Liberty Enlist is definitely the option when it's going to that farmers need to be using when we're working with extremely tall plants.
Let's go back over that again. So you're saying a Liberty full rate and Enlist, which has the...
You can use the Enlist 1 product.
Okay.
So a full rate of Enlist 1, which is the 240 straight goods by itself, is 32 ounces a quart. So you're going to use a quart of Enlist 1, and you're going to use 43 ounces, which is the max labeled rate for Liberty.
We have a really good video, which we can link to from the University of Nebraska, that talks about these growing points, and definitely take the time to watch it, because it will show you what a 4-inch weed with Liberty and how it reacts, and then it has all the way up to 1.5 feet tall and on water hemp. And I encourage you to watch that to understand how exactly the scenario you're talking about, how it looks like you killed the weed and then it comes back. So that second application of Liberty when you have tall weeds is also critical too, but we probably got one shot at this now, as tall as beans are getting right now.
Yep, and then so that leads me to why last week we were talking about 2 applications of Liberty, 22 ounces, 7 to 10 days apart. We're flowering. We're flowering at this point, and we always have to follow the label. We're getting to the point where Liberty is going to start impacting yield, and we're getting off label with our spray applications. Okay. So that's why I'm walking away from 2 applications of Liberty as a rescue. We're leaning more towards hit it once, get it done, spend the money, and definitely rethink your plans for next year. If Roundup and 2,4-D did not kill the weed on this round, be marking those fields for next year, because you really want to pay attention on how you're going to handle that field for next year and the following year.
And the other thing too is we have seen in the past, in certain years, when they do really late Liberty applications, we've seen where the burning of the flowers and different things can affect the maturity and the yield too.
Correct.
So really late. So we're not in that stage right now, but follow that label.
Yep. Stay tuned. Next week we will be having pictures and videos on root digs as well. So it's that time of year where we can show farmers how to do root digs and stuff. I haven't got any done this week yet, but that's what we're going to be focusing on next week. So.
Okay. Anything else, Ben?
Nope.
Well, Henry, you always bring excitement to the table, as my brother, and so let's talk about the fertilizer side of this business. I know that farmers right now, for the most part, have their fertilizer on, maybe a little bit of late nitrogen applications, but this fall they'll be back at it again. And you're filling warehouses and getting ready for fall. And tell us what's going on in fertilizer. What are the things to watch out for?
Well, there's a lot of things going on in fertilizer. It seems like when you have $6 corn for fall. Well, I'll just go through them. We'll start out with nitrogen. I got a few notes here, but so this summer there's 3 major plants that are going to have some what they call major turnarounds. So when this happens, they're going to be down. A lot of times could be down 2 weeks, maybe longer. Sometimes when they come up, they don't come up as rapidly. So we're going into. We had a big spring. A lot of fertilizer, a lot of nitrogen has moved, and they're going into the summer period with low inventories. So the nitrogen guys are pretty bullish. Well, then when the grain price is bumped up here, was it Wednesday?
Yeah.
Wednesday when they made the announcement. That same day, CF, who is one of the largest producers of nitrogen in the world, and in the U.S. obviously too, they filed with the U.S. Department of Commerce an anti-dumping. They want to go after Trinidad and Russia for selling UAN 32% below cost into the U.S. And that, although a lot of people don't think they will be able to prove that with what's going on out there, it puts a stigmatism in there that once that happens, they can go retroactive and put these duties on. So if you ship something in today and they find out 6 months from now that, okay, they were selling below cost, they could tell the Russians and the people in Trinidad that, hey, you got to pay $30 more, on this. And so it will slow things down, or there'll be questions whether they want to bring stuff in with this. The other thing, what's going on, the U.S. has some of the lowest gas prices now, in the world. I mean, we're like $3.50, $3.60 on gas. Europe is at $9 to $10.
You're talking natural gas.
Natural gas, which is what they use to make, you got to have natural gas, and that's like 70% cost of making ammonia, and then they upgrade ammonia. So nitrogen remains strong. And then we go to the phosphate. I think we've talked a little bit about phosphate before. Phosphate was very strong. Again, inventories are very low. Mosaic did get dumping duties on the Moroccan phosphate, so there's no Moroccan coming over here. Their production has slowed significantly because they use a lot of sulfur to produce phosphate, and when the COVID hit, and people quit traveling, gas prices went down, refineries quit refining oil as much, and so sulfur as a byproduct wasn't available. As a matter of fact, I had a meeting this week, and we sell a little 90% sulfur, and we always have a summer fill program with the supplier. And so we asked him, when you're going to come out with a summer fill, and he goes, I don't think we are. Matter of fact, I think we're going up in price. So there's, from the last price, they usually have a drop for summer fill. But he goes, we're not going to do that. So that's part of it. And because they can't get sulfur, their production is down probably some people think as much as 25% on phosphate. The last ingredient is potash, and that's the kind of the big news and what's going on out there. Mosaic, who's a large producer, they have a mine called Esterhazy, and when they have what they call K1. K1 is a shaft, and then they have K2, and K2 is a shaft. And these shafts go down 3,500 feet below the surface, and everything has to come up and down up that shaft, including the labor force, the equipment, all the ore, everything. Those two shafts are connected. And then in 2010, they started building K3 shaft, and it's separate from K1, K2. They are about 9 months from completing K3. And so here it is, going to take 12 years to build K3 at a cost of about $3 billion. Well, K1, K2, one of the problems that potash mines have is they continually have water. They hit pockets of water, lakes of water, and they have to pump it out. They found out that they cannot pump it out as fast as the water's coming in, K1, K2, and they announced this summer that they're shutting it down because they think they could flood very rapidly. They could harm, you don't want to hurt your workers, and so they immediately shut stuff down. With that said, K3 is not ready yet. So they got to bring up their high-cost plant that they have sitting, Colonsay, and it takes a while to bring that plant back up. Number one, you got to bring workers back in, and of course, who wants to go to work for it knowing that when K3 comes up, they're going to shut Colonsay most likely down. They're going to lose 1 million tons of production of potash. Matter of fact, they sent out a letter to all their customers, and I got one, and they claimed force majeure on the potash. Now they said it's more the time frame. You're going to get it, but you might get it late. And you know what force majeure means is because of things beyond their control. Now, I have a good friend, Greg, and he calls it force manure. And I think he's more right than wrong on that. And then, so with that being said, potash prices have went up significantly in the last 60 days. The other thing that happened out there, and although we first thought it was going to be an issue, is that there was a political event where Ryanair was flying over Belarus. They sent a jet fighter up, escorted the plane down. They pulled somebody, the government pulled somebody off the plane they didn't like. So they were talking about putting sanctions on Belarus. Belarus brings about 500,000 tons of potash into the U.S. And so that would have made this situation worse, but now they're saying they're not going to do that. So that's probably a good thing for the potash market. But everything is very tight, and of course with these high prices of grain, the demand for fertilizer all over the world is very strong yet. So between the political, the high crop prices, we got weather issues in some places, and we're going into the hurricane season, which could make this whole issue worse. If it hits the Gulf, where you got transportation, if it hits the Tampa area, that's where they have phosphate mines. We've seen that phosphate mines had to be shut down when major hurricanes were heading that way. They get shut down for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. So there's a lot of issues going on out there. But overall, the demand remains strong, and fertilizer prices will continue to stay that way until grain prices actually drop, we think. So,
well, not exactly kind of news that farmers want to hear, but if you can get the facts and then you can adjust, and I know there's a lot of ways farmers do with soil testing and put on the proper amounts, not excessive amounts, they can weather the storm, you might say. So let's appreciate the information, because most farmers are busy day to day trying to raise a crop and then not thinking about 22, and this is going to affect 22.
It does, and although these prices are high, if you really look at the grain prices, usually the grain prices will offset your higher inputs. Normally speaking, they sound a lot higher than they are, but you remember farmers only using maybe a couple hundred pounds of potash per acre, or 100 pounds of phosphate per acre, and so there's a happy medium there, and if it gets too high, the farmers will quit buying. What cures high prices? High prices.
Okay, appreciate it. Turk, as you know, usually talks a little bit about the markets, and right now I just want to kind of fill in for him a little bit, but we're definitely in a weather market right now. It's extremes everywhere. Believe it or not, the high temperature in Canada this past week was 128 degrees, which is the highest temperature ever recorded in Canada, and that was in the Canadian prairies, which is a crop area. So they're definitely suffering. The Western Corn Belt has been hitting 90s and 100s for quite a while. and it's actually the eastern Corn Belt is probably the garden spot. And then we've got a potential hurricane coming into the Keys and to the eastern Gulf of Mexico this next week, and they expect that could potentially pull that high pressure ridge in the west further east. So in other words, some of the areas that are getting rain could start to dry up. Brazil and Argentina this past week had another night of freezing temperatures on their later planted corn. Estimates are 2 to 3 million metric tons, 80 to 120 million bushels could be dropped back. I know the trade USDA's got them figured in for about 94, and it could drop down to 86. So
they're receiving frost and freeze at like dough stage in their corn. So it'd be like us in late August, early September, getting smacked with a freeze.
They really won't know the results of the freeze until midweek of coming up here, but there is a lot of negative things going on in the weather. In the United States, over a quarter of our nation is classified with an extreme or exceptional drought. The southeast and smaller parts of the Midwest, including southeast Iowa, are well above normal on rainfall to date. And so we have flooding in small tributaries, and particularly in the lower Missouri rivers and its tributaries. 40% of the primary corn belt is in drought, including nearly 70% of Iowa. So I guess what we're saying is if we get another round of Chinese demand, could easily push values to new contract highs. So that's the powder keg we're sitting on right now. You know, is this weather? Will it be different? Will it change? Will the Chinese be coming back in to buy some more? If all those things come into play, we could see fireworks, not just on July 4th. Okay, it could be in the crops. So anyhow, I just wanted to bring everybody up to date on watch the weather, see where it's raining, and keep an eye on South America on their late corn crop and see where that's at. So that brings us to the corny jokes, which I know that's what you've been waiting for, right, Henry?
Oh, I'm leaving.
Anyhow, I got two of them this week to get you through the fourth. What does a bee use to cut firewood? A buzzsaw. Okay, this one here I think relates, we've had a lot of rain in southeast Iowa here in the past a week or so. So what kind of shorts do clouds wear? What kind of shorts do clouds wear? Thunderwear. I'm the only one laughing again. I don't know what the deal is. Anyhow, as always, we appreciate your business. We hope that you and your family are safe, particularly over the 4th of July. It seems like accidents occur because we're out of our routine, so be careful. And as always, we'll see you next week, and take care.